The honourable member for Halifax Needham.
Mr. Speaker, you may recall that in the last session of the legislature I spoke about climate change quite a few times, and so it's really nice to be sitting and listening to so many other speakers speaking about it today. I'm just gonna say a couple of things. One is just jumping off the remarks of my immediate predecessor, the member for Pictou West. There is a similarity to the connection between smoking and cancer. And one is that the large fossil fuel companies, much like big tobacco, aggressively invested in misinformation and in lobbying that prevented action when the science was clear. Because the science was actually pretty darn clear in 1968, and then it was very clear in the 1980s, and here we are in 2018, 2019. And the children who are raising their voices so strongly and with such absolute integrity were not even born when the science was clear. So yeah, that's a pretty strong link. And I think it's really important. I heard a great interview with Naomi Klein on CBC Radio this week, and she talked about the importance of us figuring out how we want to be as people and as societies as we confront this challenge. Because we can't pretend that this is not a huge challenge. And I have real concerns because I see how we are being now. And earlier in today's discussions through question period and in member statements, a number of us raised concerns about affordable housing. And I know that right now in Halifax, the shelters are full. And I know that people who even, are working, are contacting my office because they cannot abide the rent increases and they don't see how they're going to be able to stay in the homes that they have lived in for years. And people who, are living in what have been traditionally affordable rental accommodations are being served with massive rent increases. And that is, I think my colleague for Dartmouth North referenced her fear about what is going to happen when things get colder, when the weather turns. And I absolutely share those fears. And if we are tolerating this level of economic inequality, this level of social injustice in our economy now, how do we think we're going to be as a society as we confront these challenges? Because some people have the ability to try to buy their way into security as we confront this very difficult challenge ahead. And some people can even afford right now to, they can afford to pretend that we don't have to change. And yet, I think about a woman who cleans the office that I rent as a constituent in my constituency office, and I had a nice chat with her at one point this summer. And she had just taken her first trip on a plane ever. It was for her son's wedding. And she'd had such a marvelous time. And that was her first and only experience of having a week of ease at a beach and enjoying that experience that so many people, have gotten used to, and we're going to have to get used to something different. We're going to have to get used to really appreciating the experiences that are actually available to all of us and that don't cost the planet and don't cost our children's future. And my partner and I often, would make different choices, but I can usually win him over. And again this summer, we took a trip that didn't involve flying anywhere, and we went to Cape Breton. And he wasn't sure that he was going to be that into it. He loved it, and we had amazing times. At the Gaelic College, and we had amazing times at a music festival, and we had amazing times camping and hiking, and even just here in Halifax, like without going far at all. I think what the climate change crisis has brought to me is just, I so appreciate the time I have with my kids. I appreciate taking the bus with them, and I appreciate the little interactions that we have. Because really, every single one of us in this chamber is so damn lucky. There was an article, I think it was in The Guardian, that got shared online, and I happened to read this summer. I think it was in The Guardian, and it talked about what was driving the huge migration of people from Central America. And I lived in Guatemala. I lived in Guatemala for about 5 months in 1996, and then I lived there for about 18 months between 97 and 99. And during that time, I had the opportunity, the immense privilege to spend time in different Indigenous Mayan communities, where people were living already very prescribed or very precarious lives, where food security was imperiled. And now some of those people are walking, and they're walking with their children. And that is a result of climate change, because people there, they plant, they plant corn. They might plant 5 different kinds of corn, some that can withstand drought, and some that can withstand wind, and some that they can harvest early, and some that they can save, through many months. And all of that gets so messed up when you can't count on the weather. And even then, in the late 1990s, people would tell me, that the climate was changing. They didn't know anymore when to sow, and they didn't, things were not acting the same way. And so here, no matter what our situations are, certainly everyone in this house, we're so damn lucky. And yet, I have constituents who don't know where they're going to live next month. And some of you do too. All of us around the province, we see people who are living with such precarity and such stress. And if we're not taking care of each other now, if we're not doing a better job of taking care of each other now, what does that mean about how we as a society here in Nova Scotia, but we as a global society, are going to proceed? Because I think we really want to make sure that we hold on to our humanity, and that we hold on to our compassion, and that we strive to be generous and fair and equitable, and just recognize that while this is an existential crisis for all of us, some people right now are living with existential crisis and have been living with existential crisis. I've read some really great stuff by climate activists who are African American, and they made the point that slavery was an existential crisis for them. So and the fight for civil rights was a response to an existential crisis. And really, Indigenous people in Canada, for them, colonialism was an existential crisis. When your children are being taken away, and your land is being taken away, that is an existential crisis. So we have to enter into this with humility, with gratitude for what we have, and with a commitment that, yes, we're going to confront this crisis, and we must confront this crisis aggressively and with all of our energy and creativity, but we must do it in a way where we all come through the crisis together. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.